So today I'll be talking about technology dependence effect on adolescents' ability to interact and communicate. And just to define technology, I'm particularly talking about devices that leads to other source of entertainment like social media. So iPhone, iPads, tablets, Samsung Galaxies, yes. So I understand there's controversies about how technology benefits adolescents in the sense of how it broadens their opportunity to talk to other countries in quicker ways of reaching them, and how social network promotes communication and relation. But I hope that after listening to my argument, you will see that dependence on technology actually hinders adolescents' chance of advancing in their face-to-face communication skill. So I have 3 supporting claims. Adolescents' communication skills are more at risk of being hindered by technology than adults, and that adolescents are lacking in face-to-face communication opportunity, and third, because of all of this, adolescents are less equipped to interact in face-to-face communication due to technology. So I would like to first point out why I'm specifically talking about adolescents rather than adults, and that's because adolescents aren't fully developed in their learning and decision-making skill compared to adults, thus making them more likely to fall into dependence of technology. So because they're more likely to not make the perfect decisions for themselves of whether or not this is good for them, this is beneficial to them, compared to how adults today we can decide, okay, it's time for us to put down our phone, it's time for us to stop going on Facebook, at least we try. That makes them more likely, therefore more at risk. And that adolescents are growing up more detached from other people due to technology, thus having less experience than adults. So 50, 30 years ago from today, adults did not have technology where we have today, so they were in a sense forced to talk to people. But adolescents today, because technology is such distraction, they're actually taken out of that situation or that opportunity. Which brings me to my next point of how adolescents are lacking in face-to-face communication opportunities. Technology distracts adolescents away from deep engagement with people. A study commissioned by Badu, one of the world's largest social networks, states that 39% of Americans spend more time socializing online compared to face-to-face. And this is something we can see in real life in our society this day, that wherever we go, people are on their phone. So if adolescents are born in an environment like this, then how are they put into a situation where they're talking to people? Adolescents tend to use technology as an avoidance strategy. So if mom stops talking to someone on the street or in the grocery store, for example, children are reaching in for their phone rather than joining the conversations like we would 10, 20 years ago. And so in that, again, they're lacking in opportunities. So, which brings me to the fact that adolescents are less equipped because they're in lack of these opportunities. Habit of dependence on short, quick message on social media takes out the much needed practice in real life conversation. So when adolescents are using their technology on Facebook or on instant text messages, they're used to sending emojis, sending GIFs, or sending LOLs rather than what real life conversation. There's a skill that we need to recognize each other's eye contact, we need to recognize how each other is rather than just seeing an emoji next to our face. So a professor of psychiatry and biobehavior science at School of Medicine at UCLA named Dr. Gary Small puts it really well by saying humans sense many nonverbal cues, from fidgeting to foot tapping, long pauses to eye contact. And reading those signs is a skill that young people today are not learning when they're using these devices. Also, social media interactions takes out a diversity of viewpoints, thus making adolescents less prepared for face-to-face communication. Social media makes it fairly easy for adolescents to like, follow, subscribe, the type of things that they want to interact with things that they're familiar with, and in that sense, that takes out a diversity of broader opinions, that takes out the diversity of how in real life conversation, everything is more broadly opinionated. There isn't a label that says this person will agree with you. So not being able to practice in that makes them less equipped. So in conclusion, because adolescents are more at risk than adults and lacking of opportunity, thus less equipped in real life conversation, I would like to make the claim that dependence on technology hinders adolescents' chance of advancing in their face-to-face. That's all.
All right, Stephanny, you ID the topic. Your proposition ultimately is pretty clearly stated. There's a preview, and I think that you start off well with the preview, identifying what the supporting points are, but after you get past that first point, the next 2 points are not very distinct in the preview. They're a little bit more distinct in the body of the speech, although the third point, I do think, still stays relatively hidden. So I think you need some clearer transitions on those points so the material will flow together more effectively. I think you could develop a little bit more information to show that there is controversy on this. I know that people complain about these sorts of things. It's often the subject of parody in television ads or on comedy programs that people are engaged in digital communication when they're sitting right next to each other, for instance. I think that you could probably demonstrate that there are some cultural critics of this sort of behavior and show that there's a reason that we need to talk about this. The signpost on the first point was just like in the preview, it was the clearest substructure signpost when you got to it, so I know where you are. And then you make a bunch of assertions about adolescence, which I personally am inclined to believe are true, but which are mostly asserted on your part, and I think that you need to provide us some evidence on those particular points. It sounds to me like you've done some research, and there's probably a scholar who's made these inferences, and why you're not quoting them is not clear to me. I think you need to be quoting them and including them in the presentation. In the body of the speech, I did say that there was a good transition to the second point where you were talking about face-to-face issues, and I thought you explained that a little bit better. You've got an argument here about how people might use this as avoidance, and you've got a hypothetical example that you're dealing with, but that's the only information that we have on this particular point. There's one statistic that says that a lot of people's communication nowadays is online, 39%, but there's not any information that says that that means that they are less effective, that they are misunderstood more, that their skill set is not simply adapting to the new technologies. I think that you need to make a more thorough argument on that particular point. The third point, that they're less equipped, I'm not exactly sure how it is that this idea is being developed. It never really gets clarified. The one thing that I think you've got going for you here is the quote from the psychology professor that explains that there appears to be less focus by people in a particular age group on nonverbal cues that they might be getting. And I think that's the start of an argument. I just need to see some follow-up on it because at this moment it's pretty speculative. I thought that you did a good job when you're speaking to us using your gestures and your voice. Your eye contact's a little weak, and I thought you had a good summary and exit line, and then you stepped on it with the Porky Pig exit line. So just be more forceful about your purpose statement there, your proposition at the end. All right, thank you.